Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Grab a Seat podcast, the only place where we are speaking to the top leadership of Grab Love brand here in Southeast Asia. And oh my God, what incredible conversations we've had so far. And it's not every day, mind you, that we have the Chief Product Officer and the Chief Technology Officer of Grab right here in one conversation. So this one's going to be an absolute cracker of a podcast episode. I'm Ankit, tuning in from sunny Bengaluru, and I'm hoping from sunny Singapore, we've got Philipp and we've got Suthen. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ankit. Really happy to be here.
Thanks so much, Ankit. Great having a chat.
Amazing. Is black the dress code? Because I definitely did not get the memo to wear black. So, hey, I'm standing out.
Yeah, actually, most of us actually do wear black t-shirts every day. I think Philipp's wearing Philip, what you're not wearing just a pure black t-shirt. You're wearing something for your team, right? Or one of the teams you used to be part of.
It's the fulfillment team, on time, real time for team fulfillment, or other side team fulfillment, as you can see.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we also have team t-shirts here.
That's amazing. I'm definitely going to ask for some. I've also read about something called reducing decision fatigue, which is why a lot of cool people, such as you all, have pretty much like a standard wardrobe for most workdays. Is that something you follow, Sudhan and Philipp?
It's true for me. I just have a rack full of. I don't know if I'm a cool person, so the first part of the premise may not hold, but definitely do try to reduce decision fatigue. I wear the same black t-shirts. I have about 8 or 9 of them, and the same pants, or not the same pants every day, but the same brand and same style of pants every day.
Wow, yeah. Philipp.
Same here. I think my team has said this week when we had our product design analytics Christmas party, where like a batik was the first time that they see me in a non-Grab t-shirt. So definitely very standard, like every day a different Grab shirt.
My goodness. Okay, well, that's one thing I'm going to have to probably change in my life if I ever want to be a CPO or a CTO. But let's jump right in over here. And I want to start with you, Suthen. I was reading about your fascinating, incredible journey. A little over a decade now that you've been here at Grab, right from 2012. We're coming in on 2024 now, so almost 12 years. I'm going to give you a tough one and then an easy one. If you were to describe the last 12 years in one word, what would that word be? And then after that, I'll let you just use a lot more words and tell us what the last 12 years have been like.
Thrilling.
I love that. Yeah. I love that. Okay. Care to elaborate?
Yeah. So expanding on that, one thing I'd say at Grab is there's never a dull day here. There are days that I guess are sometimes a bit frustrating. There are more days that are quite exciting. There are days where you feel very challenged. And some days you're kind of quite tired because you've done a lot of work. But I don't think there's any day I'd be able to kind of come in and say, man, I came back and today was just, a business as usual day. I wouldn't associate anything that happens here with just this is a 9 to 5. You kind of do your time and then go back home. I'd say there's an interesting challenge every day. Most of the days they're interesting in kind of the very healthy way of the word interesting, I suppose, where it's a technical challenge. It's a real and a technical challenge that's applied to a business that makes a difference in millions of lives in Southeast Asia. And it's gratifying to know that when you do something or you ship something, you can actually walk out the door and see someone beside you who's using exactly something you built or someone who you worked with built. So that's extremely gratifying. So I'd say that's where the thrill comes from as well. And I'd say the company continues to after kind of, I guess, solving one challenge, finds another one to pick up and try to solve as well. So there's a kind of internal joke in Grab that 1 month in Grab is a year anywhere else. So I suppose given it's been about 10 years now, I've worked 10 years now, I've worked 120 years at Grab.
Wow.
But I'd say thrilling is the word I'd use to describe Grab.
Sounds very Master Shifu-like from Kung Fu Panda, but that's incredible. That's incredible. And it doesn't show on your face at all. I will dig into your definitely not skincare routine, but your Zen routine as to how you stay in shape and how you manage to still be so excited and so content about what you're doing. But over to you, Philip. You've of course been here for a couple of years now, and so many new things for you, from Southeast Asia to Singapore to Grab to everything. How's it been for you? In one word first, and then a little more elaboration.
I would say fulfilling. Also because my shirt says that. But beyond that, I would say for me the most gratifying part is what Suthen already said, right? Like that every day in our job we help millions of people, right? Like our drivers that make a living, our merchants that sell their products that they're proud of, and then like our consumers that use that. So what I mean as a technologist, I really love is like solving real world problems. And at Grab, we're solving really, really tough problems. So I think that's what like keeps me energized every day, and like keeps me going and looking forward to new challenges.
Beautiful, fulfilling, and thrilling. What a great way to start this conversation. I want to switch gears and come to the domain. With each passing year, you feel like, oh my God, this was really the year when technology took center stage. And then comes along the next year, and then comes along a year like 2023, where everything from ChatGPT to generative AI to robotics and space tech and everything is taking center stage, And every year feels like, oh my God, it's really happening all around us, isn't it? So I want to hear from you, Philip, first, and then Suthen. What are some of the absolutely breakthrough, disruptive technologies that are unfolding and unraveling right in front of our eyes, all around us today, that you think are really concretely going to shape our near future?
Yeah, I mean, you alluded and mentioned many of them already, right? Like, but I think we're really, really lucky, right? Like, what's happening with generative AI, I think is like a once in a decade revolution, right? Like, I mean, I've been around in tech for a while. I've seen like from desktop to web, from web to mobile, and I think now we have like this next big paradigm shift to like really AI being in our everyday lives, right? Like, I mean, I use like AI. I just used AI to plan my holidays, right? Like, so I have like ski holidays coming up, and I used AI to help me pick the hotel. I used AI to pick like my schedule, to pick the destination, and many other things, right? Like, so I do think we are entering this like amazing age of like really where we have all personal AI assistants. And I mean, a lot of us who are like sci-fi fans have been waiting that for like, I've been waiting for that since my childhood. So I think now like my childhood dreams are finally coming to reality. So hopefully we can be really like big part of that at Grab, of like making that a reality. And that's kind of like what's really exciting for me.
I just want to expand and double click on that a bit, and I'll come to you, Sudhan, in just a minute. But I loved what you said, that your own childhood reality of science fiction is coming true. But being the chief product officer of Grab also means that you are, in a way, an enabler and responsible for the science fiction dream coming true for hundreds of millions of users across Southeast Asia, with every decision that you take as CPO and the work that your teams do. How many times does it happen in a day, or otherwise, like you just said that you used AI to plan your entire vacation? How many times when you're using a product, you go like, when am I bringing that to Grab? How do I bring this to Grab? Or how does some version of this come to our Superapp? Does that happen to you?
Oh, all the time. Right? Like, so I think, right, like, I mean, I was just last week in Chiang Mai in Thailand. And I just like send a bunch of like memos to the teams and saying like, hey, look, I've seen this. Like, it would be awesome if we have that. It would be great if we can learn that. So we generally have like a big learning culture at Grab. So we like try to really immerse ourselves in our markets and other markets, and really bring as much of that as possible to our users. And a lot of that then also sees the light of the day in our app. So many of our innovations are really from us learning both what users need and seeing like some of the best things that other people around the world have done.
Incredible. Love that. Constant learning and reiterating. Over to you, Sudhan. What are some of the technologies that you're seeing around you that are blowing your mind and that you think are going to really define the near future?
So, I mean, I think for me too, it's generative AI. And, I know this gets kind of talked about a lot, but like, to me, when Philip was talking about kind of those super cycles, we had the computing, like, mainframes, and then desktop, and then web, and then mobile. And each of those were super cycles in computing, right? And each of those changes in form factors resulted in new applications being built. Grab came to existence in the mobile super cycle. We are a mobile first application. When I take a step back, that is the low bar of what the generative AI revolution is being described of. Like, that is the understated version where they're saying it's just a new computing super cycle. The upper bar, and Philip and I attended a talk by Jensen Huang yesterday, is this is the fourth industrial revolution. And so when you kind of go, this is the range of what we're describing at, and even the more skeptical or understated version is this is just a super cycle, and it could be a fourth industrial revolution. You kind of sit back and go, wow, what an exciting time to be alive. And I don't know if we've hit AGI yet or not, but again, it's similar to what Philip said. It's always been this dream. Can you make a computer that can talk to you like a human? Can you have a friend that's a computer? Can you have a buddy that guides you through life but doesn't have the interest that other human beings have? And all of this is suddenly becoming more possible. And I think it's going to be incredible to see what happens next. I mean, even if all that happens is we stop right here, like, the stuff doesn't get any smarter, right? It stays exactly where it is. It's still such a step change in how we approach computers today. I think it's astounding sometimes how what is magical at the moment becomes so commonplace. I think if we showed someone in 2010 what we're doing today, people would be like, they'd go like, is this, what future is this from? Yet now everyone is kind of talking to ChatGPT as if, it's commonplace. The same way that, Google was mind-blowing in search when it first came out. Now everyone uses it as a verb. So, I think it's just such an exciting time to be alive. And I think really, if you ask me, between that whole like super cycle and industrial revolution, I think on that scale, we're probably closer to the fourth industrial revolution than a technology super cycle.
Fascinating. That's a huge paradigm shift, and super excited to witness all of this and for you all to build for it. I'm going to switch to the app itself. Philip, Grab is a phenomenal case study when it comes to being a super app. I have some thoughts on how it can become superer with some of the things that Suthen was saying. Hey, if you're saying super app, where is dating on Grab? Grab a date. Where is friend on Grab? Grab a friend. Are these going to be AI friends? Are these going to be AI dates? Who knows? But jokes aside, I would love to understand the process of genesis. Did it start off as, hey, let's take one vertical and really go deep and wide on this and then build around it? Or was it always like, okay, we want to do 4 or 5 different verticals, so let's start slowly, putting in place the building blocks for all of this? How did that happen?
So I think obviously Sudden has been around at the time when it happened, but basically it started out really like in mobility, right? Like it started out like originally being called like My Taxi, right? Like to really solve the problem around safe transportation, and then like expanded very rapidly from that, right? Like so both like geographically from like originally starting in Malaysia to being all over Southeast Asia, as well as starting from like mobility in the beginning to food, to broader deliveries, right? Like package deliveries with express financial services. We just launched a bunch of banks. So I don't know about the service you mentioned, but it definitely gets more super every few years. So there's definitely a trend on that.
I like that. Thank you. Sudhen, you're one of the OG ones who saw the birthing of this. So take us through what was some of the boardroom discussions back then, and how is it that you really decide to onboard or not onboard a new feature?
So, it's interesting because, I think the term like boardroom discussions, and what comes to mind for me is like, this is like a financial decision. We're going, where do we play next? Where do we make money and so on? I don't think that's actually how that happened. And so to answer your question, we actually did start with one vertical. So I don't think it was intentional to become a super app from the start. But the way I'd frame the evolution is it was kind of see a problem, do our best to fix the problem with technology. And then when we feel we've done a good enough job or we see another problem, we go, can we kind of use the same capabilities we fixed the first problem with to fix another one? So like giving you the genesis of this, it would be I mean, for those who are not aware of Grab's origin story, it very much started around this idea of safety for women in Malaysia. At the time, Malaysia's, and specifically riding in taxis, Malaysia's taxis at the time had just a really terrible reputation. Even for me personally, I have a younger sister, and she came home one day in tears, just having a really bad experience on a short 5-minute ride from a nearby transit station to our home, because the taxi driver refused to use the meter, but acted threateningly when she kind of asked, why won't you use the meter? And this was, with Huiling, who was a management consultant at the time and used to work late nights and didn't drive. She used to ride home in a taxi, and her mom used to be on a phone with her, just kind of call her, and they wouldn't even have a conversation, just keep an open line, because just the fact that the driver would be aware that Ling had that open line to someone else meant someone was watching, and therefore kind of provided greater safety. So that was the original problem the company was started to solve. And what we saw was basically a way to a few bad apples were giving the taxi industry a bad reputation. How did we make sure we also celebrated the good apples? How did we make sure that we provided an incentive structure that meant good taxi drivers could be matched with good passengers, and you could have a healthy marketplace? Now, as we solved that, we also discovered, well, actually mobility solutions needed to go beyond taxis. And when we went into ride hailing with private hired vehicles, then we discovered, look, actually a lot of things that are inconvenient, you have to go out and get them, whether you're riding in a car or a taxi. And wouldn't it be nice if it came to you? And that's, the same platforms we use to dispatch people, we realized we could dispatch goods on them as well. So we expanded from there. And then we discovered, well, paying with cash is both inconvenient and also not particularly safe. So then we expanded to cashless capabilities, which later became our financial technology. So you can kind of see this as it's a super app in retrospect. And I'd say now, as we kind of expanded into more things, we started investing in horizontal capabilities that cut across all these verticals. But it wasn't a boardroom discussion per se. It was more, what is the next problem we need to solve to just make life better for people in this region?
More organic. And I think that's exactly why the evolution has been so organic, and it resonates with hundreds of millions of users, driver partners and consumers across the region. Phenomenal story. I especially love the origin story. I mean, of course, the circumstances were difficult and necessity is the mother of invention, but I'm so glad that the founders decided to solve this problem, tackle it, and make life easier for so many people. Incredible. I love what Suthen said also about the organic journey. And that actually brings me to a question for you, Philipp, which is, organically, what are the human sensors catching from sounds on the ground across the region? What are the new trends, or what is a new need that can be solved or potentially explored, that, hey, maybe in the super app space, X is also something that we can do. Y is also something we can do. I'm going to continue saying there is room for grab a date, grab a friend, maybe an AI friend, because it's a very organic need across the Southeast Asian region, considering how big loneliness is for everyone. But jokes apart, how do you all sense the mood for what's going on ground? Like you said, going out there in the market and being on the street actually gives you ideas. So what are you picking, if anything?
So there's definitely like really a lot of room for more and new things for our users. I would say overall, right now, I think there's so much we can do in the existing services that we have, right? Like, so I don't think that our key priority will be like launching like a lot of completely new verticals. But even in our existing verticals, right? Like right now we have, and that we share like publicly, we have like 35 million people every month using and transacting on our services. So that's like about 1 in 20 people in Southeast Asia. But if you think about the needs that we are serving, right? Like the need for mobility, the need for food, I mean, everybody has that need, right? Like, so when you think that we are at like 1 in 20 is like, we can go still like serving many, many more people. And then if I'm like in the region and talk to people, what are problems that we can solve better, right? Like, so one problem that we're really from our company like subscribe to solve is the topic of affordability. Like we've worked this year very hard to make our services more affordable. We've, for example, launched like two-wheel motorcycle taxis in the Philippines, right? Like, so which is basically like a way that people and like as students described, right? Like safety is at the core of what we're doing. So we are many times safer than all the other options. So we've launched something that is very affordable, but it also gives them like the Grab safety promise, right? Like things like that, right? Like, so that was for us very, very important because basically we could like really solve an important problem that people have, right? Like, and that were a bunch of people that maybe couldn't have afforded like a Grab car every day, but now they can afford using our service every day, right? Like we've launched, like for food delivery, we've launched a saver option. So people that are willing to wait a little bit longer for their food, they can get a discount on it, right? Like, and for many people, right, like a $2-3 discount means a big difference when they order food. And I think that's really what we're like striving for. How can we make our services accessible to as many people as possible? And there's a lot of innovations going into that, right? Like when we think about our food delivery, right? Like every second we can shave off from a delivery means we can like lower our cost and prices, right? Like, so this is why our tech teams relentlessly optimize the whole journey so we can provide the same service and the same quality or even a better quality at a lower cost, right? Like, so that's something that I'm really very passionate about. Instead of just, I mean, we can definitely launch a bunch of new services, and I love the ideas, so we'll see about them. But I love like even making our existing services a lot better and accessible to many, many million more people.
Love that, Philip. Definitely, increasing the penetration of the services and consumer base and bringing in more efficiencies. Absolutely love that. You mentioned something which is actually a great segue for the next question. You spoke about the innovations and refinement of innovations. And Suthen, I want to come to you with regards to that. Whoever I've spoken to at Grab so far, I've spoken to the data science team, I've spoken to Sriram, and it is unbelievable how innovative the workforce is, how innovative the leadership is, and how tech forward and learning attitude there is. Right here in conversation, Philip spoke about how he was in Chiang Mai and just raked up a bunch of memos as to what newness we can bring into the system. Talk to us about this culture of innovation. It's a two-pronged question. Number one, and number two, a corollary to that question is, what impact does this have, considering you all are the market leaders, not just in Singapore, but in the region? What impact does this have on the industry, on competition, on consumers, on other stakeholders?
So in terms of the culture of innovation, I'd say a big part of our culture is really applied innovation as well. We don't invent things for the sake of just inventing them, but we start from the customer. What is the problem the customer needs to solve? And how can we be the best at solving it? How can we do better? Some of this starts from the perspective of just breaking trade-offs, Ankit. Someone will go, I want something cheap. But then you go, well, you can't have it cheap. You'll have to wait a long time or not at all, right? And the work that we did, especially the fulfillment team that, the T-shirt that Philip is wearing, they did, right, was to look into how do we break that trade-off? So how do we create, in this situation, exceptional value for money, where, yes, you're paying less, but the discount you get on the money you pay isn't a discount on the convenience that is proportional. How do you have a disproportionately lower discount on convenience with a disproportionately high discount on price? And so a lot of our innovation is based around that. How do we kind of break trade-offs as we go into these things and use technology to break those trade-offs? We go, what is the problem here? And actually, could we apply a solution? And like one example of that was in looking in terms of, actually to your second point as well, looking in terms of efficiencies in the marketplace, we really needed to get better at making sure that drivers spend less time waiting in restaurants. So like one thing that happens with food delivery is what you really don't want is the driver to show up at the restaurant. Like if you kind of think of the worst case is they show up at the restaurant and only then the restaurant starts preparing the food. And so the driver is sitting there waiting for the food to be ready. So from the consumer side, they've gotten the time it takes for the driver to get to the restaurant, the time the restaurant takes to prepare the food, then the time it takes for the driver to get from the restaurant to them, right? So that's a bad experience for the consumer. it's a bad experience for the driver because that time is money. While they're waiting in that restaurant, they could have been making other deliveries. And that time being money means that we can't pass savings on to our consumer. So the work the team did, where did we apply technology to do better there? Well, first, we started getting better at estimating how long it takes to prepare the food. And we made it such that our dispatch matches as closely as possible the estimated time of the food, so that when the driver walks in the restaurant, in the perfect scenario, the food hits the counter right in front of them, fresh and piping hot, they pick it up and walk out of the restaurant. But then, your estimates are only as good as the data you have. So how do we get better at going, the drivers arrive at the restaurant? Because data from the field can sometimes be unreliable. Sometimes people might indicate they've prepared the food or arrived at the restaurant earlier than they should have, or when they didn't. So there's error there. Sometimes people forget to do it. And so how do we predict it more accurately? So we actually started putting beacons in the restaurant where we check when the driver comes in. We use Bluetooth beacons to detect and have a ping to the driver's application to say they've arrived. And we use that to cross-correlate against our data, to cross-check and make our estimates more accurate. And just shaving off these minutes, we kind of find all these minutes of dead time. As we take those minutes off, and we've saved this, I think in 2022 is about 12% reduction, if not higher than that. Just shaving off each of those time allows us then to go, well, look, a driver now earns more per hour. And some of that earnings we could also redirect to giving it to consumers by giving them a cheaper product that still has high quality delivery. And that's what I was talking about earlier in terms of both innovation that breaks trade-offs, but also creates value for our stakeholders in the marketplace. The consumer gets their food faster. They don't have to wait as long. They pay less. The driver earns more. They're not waiting around. They're making money because they're just doing more deliveries. Everyone wins in this situation.
Fascinating. Love the Bluetooth beacon idea. Absolutely love it. Such clever innovation and meaningful. Philipp, I want to ask you about, you've worked across the world and multiple different, so to say, tech hubs, from the Silicon Valley in the US to, I think you've also done your time in China, etc. What's it like to be here in the epicenter of Southeast Asia in Singapore at Grab? And how do you see Grab's, in a way, impact in the region? How do you see that evolving? What are you excited about with regards to Grab's technological future and its impact on the broader tech industry in the region and abroad?
So I'm absolutely loving it being in Southeast Asia. For me, really, as I said earlier, what really matters is solving problems that are important for people. That is really important. And every time I go like to Thailand or to Philippines a few weeks ago or to Indonesia, I see that there's real needs that our drivers have that need to earn a better income, have a better life, have more control in their life, all of those things. I see the needs from our users. So I think that's really what I think that in Southeast Asia, I think I really my mindset is every problem is an opportunity. And I think for better or worse, there's many opportunities here in Southeast Asia. So many things that can still be solved, right? So that's why I think really, and then in generally the openness is great, right? People are very open to adopt new things, to try new things. So that's what I love, right? That's why technology can really change people's life here for the better. And that's why I think as a technologist, it's a great place to be in Southeast Asia, with the level of growth that we see here, and with the level of new things being adopted all the time. And to your second question about Grab, but I do think we're in a very, very special place as a company, right? So because in many cases, right, we're a significant part of transport and mobility in cities. So I do think it's an honor and a responsibility at the same time if the service is used by so many people. So I think that's kind of really how I think about it, and how I think that we can basically bring new innovations to people, as Suthen talked about, to help more people, right? That's really the exciting part. And I think as tech leaders at Grab, we're also very blessed, right? Like one thing that I've reflected for this year is that we have gotten like visits from many of like the global technology leaders who, when they come to the region, they pay a visit to us at Grab because they really see us as like one of the partners to work with in bringing this innovation. And we are many like of the global's biggest tech companies that we have as partners that we work with. And that's really exciting to be in this role as like one of the most impactful tech companies in Southeast Asia. So that's what I'm personally like feel very very blessed with having that opportunity.
Love that attitude of gratitude. Love it. And what a nice time of the year also to reflect and bring it all together. I want to ask you this question, Philipp, and then I'll ask the same question to Suthen. Young Philipp, studying in Cologne, that's where you studied. You did your MBA, right? I looked up your LinkedIn. So young Philipp studying in Cologne, did you in your wildest imagination ever think that you'd be here doing what you're doing, being the chief product officer of the biggest super app in Southeast Asia? Clearly, it's impossible to think it up when you're in college. But if you were to look back and help, the young ones who want to join companies like Grab today, if you can help them sort of locate a map, because you're fulfillment, locate a map, how can someone become the next Philipp, the next chief product officer of Grab? What do they need to do?
Young Philipp had a very wild imagination back in the days. So young Philipp, like 20 years ago, probably would have imagined that he'll be retired by now and hacking on like some cool like hobby projects and open source or something like that. So I think young Philipp would have imagined a different future that would have been like hopefully like equally exciting. But I think like the thing that I would say is, I think one thing that has really helped me is like curiosity and openness to try new things, right? Like what I've learned across, right? Like, and if you like described some of this, I started in Europe, moved over to Silicon Valley, moved over to Asia, and it wasn't really from this like big genius master plan that I had. I do this in my career, I do that. I think it for me it had really to do with a passion to solve a problem, and like try my best to be as good as possible as that. And then there will be always new opportunities opening up, right? Like, so I think like what I see in young folks, right? Like that some of our best folks that we have, they really just like, look, I really just want to solve a problem and it keeps me awake day and night. And I really just want to solve it because it's so beautiful to solve that problem. And then like when they have that problem solved, there will be a bigger problem that they can solve, and that will take them to another interesting place. So I think that's kind of like the advice that I would give for young folks, to really just stay curious and just like really, be passionate about the thing that you're solving, and like then the next thing will show up. And I don't think that, I mean, at least for me, I didn't really need like a big like 20-year plan to get there.
Also, what do you do with your 10, 20, 30-year plans where the world all around us is literally pivoting every year in front of our eyes? So 10, 20-year plans be damned. But Suthen, looking back, growing up in Malaysia and where you are today, what a phenomenal journey. How would you plot the waypoints on your journey so far? And what advice would you give to young professionals wanting to chart on a similar illustrious career?
Yeah, so I'd say, honestly, like similar to Philipp, I didn't have like a 30-year plan in the sense of I was like, I aim to be a chief technology officer one day. I think the way to describe my trajectory is I kind of followed my heart and my passions, but was about things that I was curious about and kind of wanted to learn more about. And in the process, and I don't think that necessarily would have led me automatic. I think I'm extremely lucky to end up in the role I am today. I'm extremely privileged, and I'm happy to use that role to do good in it. But I wasn't planning to become a chief technology officer, when I was 13. But I did want to work in software, and I did like working with computers. And so when I was a teenager, I decided very much that I wanted to do stuff with computers for the rest of my life, but wasn't clear what. But I think the other part I'd say is that my growth trajectory was also somewhat non-linear, in the sense that I took diversions that were out of the field of software that turned out to enrich my capabilities in the field of software, or to make me a more effective software engineer. So As part of what I was doing, even when I was in university, I joke sometimes that I had a major in software engineering and a minor in debating. I participated in intervarsity debating, and that sparked actually my curiosity for things in the arts and humanities that extended beyond what I studied in software engineering. So to kind of also in Malaysia, I wanted to contribute back to my to my country, and I thought of actually going into not politics but public service. And I thought, what if I could use my software knowledge but know what to do in public service and apply it there. And so I did a master's in public policy, not in computer science. And so, I ended up kind of continuing in software. But the fact I did that master's in public policy kind of enriched my mind in providing me frameworks to address a lot of the context in which our software sits, whether it's the social context in terms of actually what we're trying to do and add value to society and create value for Southeast Asia, to even the business context. Understanding things like how do I present this, or how do we have a framework here that's explainable and accessible to everyone? It isn't just technical conversations. And how do I make sure that not just what we build or how we build it, but why we build it is something that the software engineering organization can be part of. So I'd say, if I was to give advice to people, I'd say, one, don't aim to just acquire titles or a career position. Aim to acquire skills. Aim to acquire something that will help you become a richer human being, that will make you more multidimensional. And there's no guarantee in life on any of these things, but I do believe that when you do that, good things do follow, because just the places that you can add value in and also learn from kind of exponentially increase. It's a self-reinforcing loop that the more skills you have, the more you can acquire skills easily, because you have the mental models to easily bring in those new skills. And I think in that path, you also end up becoming more successful in whatever situation you're in.
That's incredible. Also, hey, if you ever decide to run for office, I'm voting for you, man.
not going for politics, policy.
That's incredible. What's really standing out for me, speaking to both of you and speaking to the leadership at Grab from other verticals and departments, is what a fascinating worldview and outlook they have. And I'm sure you bring this to the culture in the teams that you build and you groom and you mentor and you foster. So talk to me about the culture in the product org that you are leading, Philipp. And then Suthen, tell me about the culture that you are building and leading in the tech org. And if you could give me a few examples. We've all been through the pandemic. It was an incredibly challenging time. And that's really where a lot of companies showcase their true heart, or the lack of it in the case of some companies. But what's the culture like?
Yeah, so I think, the pandemic was definitely a very tough time, especially for us as a company, because like all of our services happen in the real world, right? Like when many of us were locked in at home, when in the reality where like our services were about transporting people, delivering goods, definitely not an easy time. And we really, like, to go back to your question about culture, we really pride ourselves on immersing ourselves on the ground, right? Like, so I think our culture is really about going on the ground and trying to be in the shoes of our drivers, of our merchants, and our customers, right? Like, so I talked earlier about like the trip to Chiang Mai. So there's like 20 tech leaders, myself. We really like go on the ground and we go things and like we deliver food, right? Like, so consumers are always like very surprised when there's like a bunch of grabbers showing up and like delivering food to our customers, riding along with our drivers, learning what is working well for them, what can we do better to serve them better, right? Like, so this really like this belief in ground truth and learning on the ground is really like core part of our culture and product. And it all goes down to really like solving problems, right? Like, so that's, I think, the core part of our culture is really first of all, we need to understand what the problem is. That's why we need to go on the ground, right? Like we ask people, hey, what could we do better for you? What is like what is like in your life? What is an area of improvement? And that can be both for our existing services as well as for coming up for new things, right? Like understanding the pain points. And then it's like basically going back and across all the teams, across our product, design, analytics, engineering, data science, figuring out what kind of creative ways can we do to like solve these problems, right? Like, and that's, I think, the culture. It's a continuous learning cycle, right? Like you learn about you immerse yourself, you go on the ground, you learn about the problems, and then you think like, what can like technology do to solve these problems? And then again, like once you have an idea, then you take whatever you think is the solution, try to implement it in a prototype, and then you test it out. And then you see like, is your hypothesis, which you came up in a meeting room and a whiteboard, does it really work in the real world? And then you do the same cycle over and over again, right? Like, so our culture is really going on the ground, solving problems and iterating really, really fast, right? Like that's, I think, what is at the core of our culture and our product org.
The important bit that I love is challenging the hypotheses and the models or MVPs from air-conditioned offices or boardrooms on ground. That is where rubber meets the road. And I love that. That makes a big difference. Sudhan, any examples of any of the cultural fabric that the tech org has?
So in the engineering org, I'd say, Ankit, one thing we emphasize is this idea of ownership of outcomes, and very much kind of in parallel with what Philipp described. So when Philipp says tech leaders, the engineers also go to the ground. They use the product. So we don't believe in this idea that you throw things over the fence or you follow this waterfall approach that, well, if I build it according to spec, but it doesn't work, that's not my problem. I've gotten the job done. That's not how it works in engineering. I grabbed the best engineering leaders, and I'm glad actually that you got to talk to other people from our tech org before you spoke to us, because often I think when people go, when they ask leaders, what's the culture like in their organization? I can tell you what I hope it's like, but you should ask the people in the organization what it's like. And if you're hearing that from them as well, that's great. But I think it's very much tied to this idea of we want ownership of outcomes that create value for our customers. For engineers, we very much expect them to understand why a product is built and be part of the conversation in deciding how things get done, what should be built, and so on. Not just implementing solutions, but understanding a problem and making a solution that's fit for solving the problem, and not stopping until the problem is actually solved. Don't just build a solution, build the solution for it. And I'd say this happens, the team then, therefore, with this spirit of ownership, you kind of end up with the team kind of really just being very motivated when an opportunity comes up to really solve a problem, just taking it forward. And I think the example that Philipp raised earlier about having a two-wheel transportation opportunity in the Philippines, earlier this year we really decided to scale the product up, and roadmaps were put in place, everything was kind of locked in, and we went like, actually, but we really need to do this. And this is the other thing I really like about Grab. Like, people collaborate across functions, almost seamlessly. Like when there's something to move on, people don't kind of go like, what's my title? What's my function? They just go, let's get this done. And folks started, like in January, we made the decision to kind of really overhaul our application that does this. And by the middle of I think in 3 months, we kind of did the overhaul. We kind of provide a whole new service in the country, right? And everyone came together to get it done. Engineers kind of like, there wasn't like, oh, the spec is not clear type of conversation. People just went, we really need to get this done. Let's find ways to get it done. We can work over weekends if necessary. We'll find any obstacle, and the obstacle, it's not something that we kind of stop when we see it, but we see the obstacle as an opportunity to solve something cool, just another thing to get over, and we'll get to the finish line. And I think that's kind of the attitude we hope to embody both in engineering and product, where looking at the problems we see, we go, it's everyone's responsibility. Everyone needs to own the process of getting this done, getting things solved.
Love that collaborative attitude. You know, one thing that happens in large organizations, and you've become a large organization now by every sort of benchmark or definition, from a consumer point of view, even from a number of employees' point of view, is when an individual engineer or a data scientist is working on what they are working on. It's very easy in bigger organizations to sort of, in a way, get insulated and lost in what you're doing, and not really understand or lose sight of how this is adding up to the bigger vision or mission of the organization itself. As tech leaders, how do you all ensure that that sense of being tethered to the ultimate mission and that sense of impact comes down to even the most junior resource working in the teams?
So I'd say, look, I think it is a challenge, and I don't know if I'd say we've kind of discovered the holy grail to solving it, but I'd say there are a few things at Grab that I think we're both Philipp and I quite proud of in terms of how actually it's a credit to the team and our culture here more than the two of us that this happens. The first is, I think, just intrinsically, because it's a super app, that it's because there are so many verticals and pieces to build, that problem of like, can you make impact in a way that's meaningful, that you can see, is actually still there. Because while we are a large organization, the different verticals have smaller organizations dedicated to them. So anywhere you are, whether you're in a lending team or in the mobility vertical or our technical infrastructure team, you're always doing something that makes impact somewhere. So there's no like getting lost in the the sea of people here, because while it is a large organization, I'd say there are even larger set of problems we're trying to solve, a larger set of areas we're trying to cover. So you always get to make impact somewhere. So I think to some extent, the super app point that we kind of talked about earlier kind of gives us a bit of an intrinsic advantage, that we're not really a monoline company where there's just one product that kind of we're known for. We have multiple products, and therefore there are multiple opportunities to shine. The other thing I'd say that we try to do is we always, it's just over communicating. Over communicating the why, over communicating what we're focusing on, over communicating what we hope to accomplish, and making sure that that communication is bi-directional. We do give direction from the top. We do talk about things we want to focus on as strategic areas, but we also reserve space for teams to go, actually, we think these problems are important to solve. And so I think that both of those, by kind of going, look, there's ownership here for you as much as there's direction from the top, and kind of striking that balance between the two while making sure always clear and reiterating that direction from the top. I think we've managed to kind of avoid some of this, I guess, diffusion that happens in larger organizations.
Yeah.
Philipp, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to add is, right, like we also try to like run like initiatives that make it easy for people to try stuff, right? Like, so recently we had a generative AI hackathon where like small teams came together and they built some stuff, right? Like, and we had like tens of different teams like producing like really, really cool demos. And many of them have actually shipped, right? Like, so I think like teams came together and like, and like these were like people which were not like, their job description wasn't like solve this problem. That was just something that they're really passionate about, right? Like, and that'd be anything from like better like menu pictures, translations, like different ways of like saying like having like an kind of like Instagram style food discovery where you see like big pictures, and like teams have been empowered like post this hackathon to ship those things and get them into production, right? Like, so I think what Suthen said is really correct, right? Like at Grab, we have way more problems to solve than people. So I can guarantee that nobody ever will be bored here, right? Like there's always like another thing to solve, another cool thing to do. And the good thing is also the services that they're very personally relatable, right? Like I think like any of our engineers has a mobility need, any of the engineers has a need for food. So like the stuff that you're doing is like very, very personally relatable, right? Like across all of our verticals. So people can really like feel it, right? Like they can like, so right, like when we launch a new innovation in our user interface, people on their ride home in the same evening, they can code it during the day and then test it in the evening, right? Like, and that's like really super, super cool that you can just really like, you feel what you're building, right? Like it's very, very tangible.
Love that. Last two questions for both of you. I'm so glad you all could make the time to answer all these questions. Very grateful. Number one, take me through your day. What's a typical day for a CPO? And then after that, what's a typical day for a CTO? Also throw in not just the work bit, but all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. None of you look dull at all. So what do you do to take care of your well-being, your physical, mental, spiritual, emotional well-being? Pack that in. And then the last question is going to be, I'm going to give you the opportunity to make an elevator pitch for those folks who may want to consider working at Grab. What would that elevator pitch look like, sound like? While the other person answers, the other one can scribble maybe an elevator pitch if you want. But Philipp, why don't you go first and talk to me about what a typical day looks like for you?
So a typical day for me starts quite early. So I'm quite an early bird. So usually I'd get up at like around 5 in the morning. And like one of the first things that I would like typically do is like, I really like the quiet time because at that time nobody is like working, sending me emails or Slack messages. So I would like typically start like both with a coffee and then like going through some docs. Some of the teams notice that I comment on like some of the docs quite early. So I think like that's like kind of like my quiet hour. Then post that, I would typically have my morning workout. So I really like try every morning either going for a swim or going to the gym. So that's then like usually like the 7 to 8 a.m. And then after that, like typically a bunch of meetings would start. So usually my day is quite back to back. I try to free up some time for thinking and some more creative deep work. That doesn't work quite as well as I wish most of the time. So usually it's like really like mostly like back to back meetings, both like kind of like in kind of like group problem solving as well as like individual one-on-ones. And then like typically around like 7ish or so would be like heading home, having dinner with my wife, and then just like I mean, depending, like hopefully getting like some time to think. I try to take a walk around Singapore when it's a little bit colder because during the day it's quite brutally hot. So like after the 7-8 p.m. it's quite pleasant to like take a nice walk outside. And yeah, I think that's kind of like a typical day.
Sounds like a good, well-packed day. How much percentage of time would you say you spend in the meetings and the work that you're doing? How much percentage-wise are you working on the here and now problems? A lot of it could be troubleshooting, firefighting, or just, making sure execution happening. And how much percentage of time are you working on things which are, let's say, 6, 12, 18, 24 months out?
So I'm trying to push spending more time in the longer term things, and thankfully as we're blessed that we have really good teams that like handle like the more operational things. I'd say it's maybe like half right now. So maybe half of the stuff that's like tackling things that are like kind of in the next like 6 months, and half that is like longer term beyond that, which I feel is a quite healthy balance.
It's a very healthy average. That's phenomenal, actually. Kudos to you. Thank you for sharing. Sudhan?
So I'd say, unlike Philipp, I'm a night owl that's been forced to become a lark because Philipp wakes up at 5. So both Philipp and I are also in Grab's executive committee, which means beyond kind of our day-to-day roles, our technology organization is represented in the highest decision-making body in Grab. So some of the time goes to that. So I'd say I typically wake up at about, I wake up later than Philipp. I wake up about 7:30. But on days, some days I try to work out 3 times a week. So I hit the gym and do strength training twice a week. I go for walks in the evening as well. I usually start the day kind of just really catching up on the news, check my Slack and check emails and so on. Check our systems also to kind of see where the dashboards are overnight. We've been pretty good about stability here, but it's just something I check in on because it's my primary responsibility as well. I'd say similar to Philipp, the day is a lot of meetings for me. Though I do now try to block out, about a couple of hours a week for what I call deep thought sessions, where I kind of read a document, or usually write a document as well, write my thoughts down, or kind of look at something that's more forward-looking. A lot of the meeting time, though, I'd say, the majority of it are one-on-ones or group problem-solving sessions, less so kind of administrative meetings, though those I think at my level tend to take up some time. Budgets and stuff are just a reality, but I think I wouldn't say that's reflective of kind of a average grabber's day, but because more kind of a leader's day. In terms of your question, in terms of long-term, short-term, I'd say 50-50 as well for me. Similarly, I think a lot of the conversations we're having now have become more in investing in what we describe as horizontal capabilities. So what we've been talking about a lot more at Grab is, not just what we do, but how do we make sure we start doing things that push out the art of the possible, that allow us to have just serious capabilities that kind of are self-enriching across verticals. So one thing with the Superapp, one direction you go is you kind of just become kind of several companies that happen to stick together. But how do you create an experience that's greater than the sum of its parts? And how do you ensure that the capabilities in one space can translate easy to others? Or how do you ensure you have capabilities at that foundational layer that lift all the verticals equally, that kind of create this up-leveling advantage across all of them? So that's where I've been investing a lot of my time. That 50% of long-term has been kind of looking through that with the team, kind of looking in what are the capabilities we need to build out, and also kind of making sure that we don't just kind of talk about, okay, what do we do in 18 months, but what is the thing we can do in 3 months that puts us on the right path to getting to 18 months, that allows us to test the hypothesis we have on how this could be transformational, or maybe it's not, and then we need to find something else to do.
Amazing. And what about new information, new ideas? Is it books? Is it podcasts? Is it attending industry forums?
I'd say for me, it's like I read Hacker News, so that's kind of like the kind of basic stuff that you kind of just go like, what's going on in the industry, getting you kind of a broad texture. Some of it is actually just kind of conversations, looking at tweets. I guess X now. I used to be Twitter before, but checking X and seeing kind of what's being said that's interesting. Some of it is actually, like Philipp said, one thing I think we're extremely fortunate in to be in Grab is that we really have the opportunity to talk up to a lot of people, both in one-on-one settings or small group settings, but also in kind of large forums as well. We had the CEO of GitHub recently come by and just kind of talk to the organization. And so, you have these opportunities to really kind of just hear from everyone that's in the industry, what they're working on, and not just, watch it on a video, but hear from them. So I think I'd say it's a multi-signal thing, Ankit. I don't kind of check just one source, but what I think I look at is when you hear something interesting, you kind of go, actually, let me double click on this. This might be applicable for us, and that's where that some of those 2 hours sometimes go a week, where I kind of just go like, what could we do with this if we applied it in our context?
Love it. Okay, Philipp, are you ready with the elevator pitch for a new person who would like to consider working at Grab?
All right. So I'll cheat a little bit, and I think like I would give them the pitch that has convinced me, right? Like, so I think that is like a few years back, right? Like I was actually quite skeptical joining Grab, but like I was living in San Francisco back in the day. I haven't heard about Grab before, like really joining it. And I got the opportunity even before deciding to join to go in Jakarta on the ground and meet a bunch of drivers, talk to like a bunch of grabbers and so on. And the thing that has really like sold me and that has stuck to me over this many years, right? Like I got to talk to this driver, and he would like pull out his phone and show me like a picture of his kid and say like joke that they nicknamed him Grabby, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And he said like, well, this is because like really Grab allowed me to build a life. Right? Like he was working in a bank as like a bank teller before, and Grab has allowed it. He started to drive on a motorcycle, then he started to buy a few motorcycles, rent them out to other Grab drivers. So he has truly become like a micro entrepreneur, right? Like, and I think that is when we when I got convinced, saying like, hey, this is a company that's really solving problems that matter, right? Like to have an impact. And that's kind of what like got me to join the company in the first place, and what keeps me going many years after that. And that's kind of the pitch that I would give to people, right? Like if we want to solve really hard problems in the real world and drive an impact with it, then I think you got your like fellow people that you can do that with at Grab. And that's kind of like the I've given you a very long elevator pitch, but hopefully it's the long riding elevator you're talking about.
No, definitely a good one. Definitely a good one. 10 on 10 on that. Suthen, no pressure, but your turn.
I'll give the pitch version of what Philipp said, but it actually resonates with me totally. I'd say solving challenging and exciting technical problems that make an impact that is meaningful in millions of lives.
So succinct. Brevity wins, my friend. 10 on 10. Well done. Philipp and Suthen, thank you so much for your super valuable time. Thank you for all the incredible work that you do, for empowering your teams, for impacting hundreds of millions of consumers all across Southeast Asia. And all the very best. I am looking forward to what cool new features come in the days, weeks, years to come on Asia's largest super app. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having us, Ankit.
And thank you to all you listeners and watchers for tuning in into this episode of Grab a Seat. Don't forget to catch the entire playlist and all the other incredible episodes and conversations with folks here at Grab. Have a good one.